St Andrews is well known for its ghosts and supernatural occurrences. One of these was the Lady of the Pends, also known as the Veiled Nun or the Grey Lady. During the time of Queen Mary in the 16th century, in South Street, there lived a beautiful young lady belonging to an old Scottish family. Her beauty and charm brought many suitors to her father's door, but very few, if any, were successful in courting the young woman. She would wave them away with a flick of her hand, but there was one young man that the girl decided to court. He was a fine and gallant young man from East Lothian, and for several months they spent a lot of time together and fell in love. However, the young woman didn't want to get married and decided to become a nun. When the young man heard she'd left home and entered a house of Holy Sisters, he announced his intention to immediately go to St Andrews and whisk her away, then marry her. It appears the young woman's parents were in total agreement with the suitor, and he did indeed rush to St Andrews, but he was in for a shock. On meeting his once beautiful young love, he saw that she'd done as she'd written to him that she'd threatened to do, and was horrified. She had mutilated her face, slitting her nostrils, had cut off her eyelids, and removed her top and bottom lips. She had also branded her cheeks with a hot iron. The young man, on seeing her like this, fled to Edinburgh, where he took his own life. After she'd become a nun, she too died of grief and remorse for what she'd done. This all happened more than 400 years ago, but it's said her ghost haunts the Pens in the city. She's said to wander at night in the peaceful little road that leads to St Leonard's Iron Kirk Gate, down the Pends Road that leads also to the harbour. She is dressed in black, with a long veil covering her once beautiful face, and carries a lantern in her hand. If anyone meets her in the road, she will slowly sweep the veil aside and raises the lantern to reveal her scarred face. There have been several sightings of the ghost over the years. In the late 19th century, a student at the University of St Andrews was studying divinity and canon law, and one of his friends was an older man from Cambridge. The young man invited his friend up to St Andrews for a month of golf, and he arrived on Christmas Day. A few days after his arrival, the Cambridgeman became ill and a doctor was called. The young student said that he and his friend had been down by the harbour, as he'd had business to attend to. The Cambridge man told him he would walk along the Pends Road and have a cigar while he waited. After all, it was a nice, crisp evening. After around half an hour, the student returned to where he'd left his friend, but he couldn't find him. After searching for quite some time, he finally found him leaning up against a tree at the little avenue to St Leonard's Kirk Gate. He went up to him, but it was clear something had happened. The Cambridge man turned towards him, a terrified expression on his face, and said, "Oh my God, have you come to me again?" Then he fainted. The student got some passers-by to help take him back to his lodgings. After he rested for a time, he told his story. After walking up and down the Pends Road, he thought he would have a look at the little avenue when he spotted a light approaching him, and he turned back to meet it. He thought it was a policeman, so said, "Good evening," but got no reply. Getting closer to the person, he saw it was a veiled woman with a lantern. As she got closer to him, she stopped in front of him and drew back her veil. She then held up the lantern. "My God," said the Cambridge man, his state of panic and upset clear to see. "I can never forget or describe that terrible, fearful face. I felt choked, and I felt like a log at her feet. I remember no more till I found myself in these rooms, and you two fellows sitting beside me. I leave this place tomorrow." And he did. He caught the first train south the following day. Another sighting of this apparition came in the 1920s. A woman was visiting St Andrews and walking through the Pends when she encountered a woman wearing clothes from centuries before, with her face concealed. When she arrived at her destination, she asked if there was a local pageant or fancy dress going on in the city, and told them she'd met a woman wearing 15th or 16th century clothing and had been struck by the accuracy of the outfit. She was then informed of the story and told she'd been very lucky not to have seen the woman's face. There is another sighting of this ghost. One winter's afternoon, around 1929, a doctor was waiting for her friend in the nearby Nun's Walk with her 2 dogs. They were playing about, and she was watching them, when suddenly they stopped, staring at the locked rusty gate at the end of the lane of St Leonard's School. With a low whine and a look of terror in their eyes, they shrank backward towards their mistress as though watching some sort of invisible presence approach. They continued to watch, their gaze following whatever it was until it disappeared. The doctor was convinced the spirit had emerged from the Pends road. Was this the ghost of the Lady of the Pends? There is one final tale worth recounting. During the summer of 1944, a pleasure boat capsized near the East Sands, with 3 people losing their lives. Among them was James Gourley, whose body wasn't found for a number of days. An old fisherman foretold that the body would be found, however, as he'd seen the Grey Lady standing at the harbour end of the Pends. She'd had her hands cupped to her mouth as though calling out. The old man thought she was calling for the body to return to the shore, and the next day it was recovered. The story of the Grey Lady, the Lady of the Pends, or the Veiled Nun will forever remain part of St Andrews' ghostly folklore. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.